In today's video, I wanted to begin my journey through the College of Winterhold story featured in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. This is a questline I've actually never done before. Once upon a time, I might have started the first quest, but I'm certain I've never made it beyond that. I guess in true Nordic fashion, I've always been more interested in the, shall we say, corporeal realm. Smithing, the companions, the civil war, etc. I've made battle mages who were competent in destruction and restoration, but never a character whose sole focus is the arcane. So, for this journey, I'm going to play as a mage, go through each important quest, listen to the dialogue, and discuss the story. First, let's go over a small history lesson, just to get an introduction. The college is located in the city of Winterhold, within the province of Skyrim. It's a one-off, and there aren't any other institutions tied to it. It's said to have been established sometime in the late First Era, but the earliest records date back to the Second. The college works similarly to the Empire's former Mages Guild. Scholars and researchers study there in hopes of making breakthroughs in history, alchemy, ancient relics, and of course, the arcane arts. It has a hierarchy system with wizards and witches being of different ranks. New students with a knack for spellcasting can enlist rather easily. The only thing is that they have to demonstrate some form of magical competence. Of course, something that gets brought up often is the fact that there's a hub for magic in a city full of Nords. Most Nords look down on magic and outright despise it. This is due to a myriad of reasons, but mostly because in the past, the enemies of the Nords have been magic users. Combine that with the destruction of Winterhold, and the northern people are especially suspicious of the college. For now, I'll leave the setup there as more details come to light as the story goes on. The adventure begins rather simply. Odds are, someone in Skyrim will have told you to visit the college. I know that from my experience, Farengar's Secret Fire was the first NPC to direct me there. Furthermore, if you've gone through the main questline, your journey would have already brought you to the college. That's where the Dragonborn gets sent in order to learn more about the Elder Scrolls. However, choosing to approach this as a fresh blood, I traveled to Winterhold and laid eyes on the magnificent college. The building is massive and masterfully crafted. It's only connected to the mainland via bridge. It honestly looks like it should have came crashing down. Its little island seems rather unstable and vulnerable to the sea, but perhaps that's the work of magic or just pure luck. Ready to further my studies as a mage, I started to walk along the bridge. However, I was quickly stopped and the tests began sooner than expected.
Cross the bridge at your own peril. The way is dangerous and the gate will not open. You shall not gain entry. Oh, forgive me. Most who arrive here do so because they have heard of the college beforehand. This is the College of Winterhold, a safe haven for mages in Skyrim, a place of wisdom and arcane knowledge. Perhaps, but what is it you expect to find within? I see. That power certainly exists, I assure you. Wield it faithfully, and few can withstand you. It would seem that the college has what you seek. The question now is, what can you offer the college? Not just anyone is allowed inside. Those wishing to enter must show some degree of skill with magic. A small test, if you will. Excellent. The Flame Atronach is a vital companion for anyone relying on conjuration. Summoning one here would certainly show your skill. No? Well, if you think you're capable of it, then I'd be happy to provide it to you for a mere 30 gold. Or you can try your luck with one of the court wizards around Skyrim. They also sell spells. Here you are. Now I'm anxious to see you cast it.
This is what initiates the first quest for the faction, proving that I have some competence with magic. Well, it was certainly a decent test, as 1, I got to add a new spell to my arsenal, and 2, I wasn't even sure if my character could cast the spell. He's yet to use conjuration, and summoning a Flame Atronach is apprentice level. Well, luckily for me, the spell worked. It sapped up most of my magicka, something I'd fix later, but for now, I passed the test.
Well done indeed. I think you'll be a superb addition to the college. Welcome, apprentice. I'll lead you across the bridge. Once you're inside, you'll want to speak with Mirabelle Irvine, our master wizard. Please, follow me.
That Flame Atronach would come to be my savior many times over for this questline, so it's best 30 gold I've ever spent. As Faralda escorts me across the bridge, She stops at certain points and casts a spell. This spell ends up filling these wells with a mystical blue light. Perhaps it serves as a ward to fend off those aforementioned dangers, or maybe it just literally lights the bridge up, making it easier to see along the way. Feralda is the college's gatekeeper, so she's probably well versed with the bridge's flaws and hazards. Either way, when Feralda activates the third and final well, she heads back to her post and leaves me to find Mirabelle. Entering the courtyard, it didn't take me long to find Irvine. However, she was arguing with someone, and that someone happened to be a member of the Thalmor.
I've made myself rather clear.
Yes, of course. I'm simply trying to understand the reasoning behind the decision.
You may be used to the Empire bowing to your every whim, but I'm afraid you'll find the Thalmor received no such treatment here. You are a guest of the college, here at the pleasure of the Archmage. I hope you appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, of course. The Archmage has my thanks.
Very good. Then we're done here.
Whatever that was, it sounded like typical Thalmor entitlement. It's always satisfying to see someone stand up to those elves.
Welcome to the college. Another new student. I'm surprised at how many of you there are lately. Well, first you'll need these. While you're not required to wear them, you may find them more to your liking than your current clothes. I'll give you a brief tour, and then we'll get you to your first class. Are you ready to begin? Wonderful. Please follow me, and don't wander off.
Mirabelle hands me some mage's garb, and then our little tour begins. So far, the college looks astounding, and I've only been here for about 30 seconds. Irvine explains that the college has been a focal point of Skyrim for thousands of years. Right now, her and I are standing outside the Hall of the Elements. This is where the faction holds its lectures, meetings, and practice sessions. Above it is the Arcanium, aka the library, and beyond that is the Archmage's quarters. Since the Archmage is usually occupied with other matters, Irvine is the one who runs the day-to-day operations here, sort of like how Raminus Polis did for the Mages Guild in Oblivion. Mirabelle then discusses the college's current issues. The Nords have gotten a little rowdier and more outspoken towards the Institute. While she doesn't think it'll break out into violence, the college is doing its due diligence. This would explain Feralda's strict demeanor. Next on the tour is the Hall of Attainment. It's meant for housing new members. It allows mages to conduct research and practice smaller experiments. Irvine shows me to my quarters and asks that I be considerate of my fellow apprentices. Personally, I'm not seeing a whole lot of space for magical experiments here, so either I'm getting shafted or these people are brewing potions in bed. Taking a quick look at the mage's garb, Mirabelle gifted me a novice robe of destruction, a novice hood, and a pair of regular boots. The robe, a duplicate of the one I'm wearing, allows for magicka to regenerate 50% faster, and destruction spells cost 12% less to cast. The hood is simpler and increases my magicka by 30 points. It is an upgrade compared to what I currently have on. As for the boots, there's nothing special about them, but that's the whole point. They're a blank slate, so I can put whatever enchantment I'd like on them. Back to the tour, Mirabelle is waiting for me outside, and catching up with her, she explains the next steps. My first lesson at the college is going to come from someone named Tolfdir. He's apparently a very established wizard, and he has plenty of knowledge to share. Arriving back at the courtyard, Irvine sends me off to the Hall of the Elements. Tolfdir is already addressing the new apprentices, and Mirabelle's tour is pretty much at an end. I'll do some exploration later, but first, I was curious on what Tolfdir's lesson would be like. Heading into the main building and passing on through the gates, I could see several NPCs standing in the chamber. One of them was the Thalmor agent from earlier, but I don't think he had any involvement with the class. He was simply observing. Then there was a smaller group off to the side. Tolfdir was an older Nord, and it looked as though he had 3 initiates with him. My participation would make it a class of 4.
Welcome, welcome. We were just beginning. Please, stay and listen. So, as I was saying, the first thing to understand is that magic is, by its very nature, volatile and dangerous. Unless you can control it, it can and will destroy you.
Sir, I think we all understand that fairly well. We wouldn't be here if we couldn't control magic.
Of course, my dear, of course. You all certainly possess some inherent natural ability. That much is not being questioned. What I'm talking about is true control, mastery of magic. It takes years, if not decades, of practice and study.
Then what are we waiting for? Let's get started.
Please, please. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Eagerness must be tempered with caution, or else disaster is inevitable.
But we've only just arrived here. You've no idea what any of us are capable of. Why not give us a chance to show you what we can do?
You've been quiet so far. What do you think we should do?
While this seems like a big decision, in reality, either response leads to the same lesson.
Is that so?
See, he agrees with us too. Why don't you actually show us something?
All right, let's settle down. I suppose we can try something practical. In continuing with our theme of safety, we'll start with wards. Wards are protective spells that block magic. I'll teach you all a ward, and we'll see if you can successfully use it to block spells, all right? Would you mind helping me with the demonstration? Are you at all familiar with ward spells? That's all right. I can teach you a very basic ward, one that's enough for the purposes of this lesson. Now, if you'll just stand right over there, I'll cast a spell at you, and you block it with the ward. Here we go. Over there, please, just opposite me. Wouldn't want anyone else in the way.
Tolfdir ends up teaching me the restoration spell, Lesser Ward. It increases my armor by 40 points and negates up to 40 points of spell damage and effects. Equipping the spell and casting it, Tolfdir fires off a destruction spell and it practically bounces off my barrier.
Well, I think this is an excellent start. I'd like you all to continue practicing with wards, please. I think perhaps we're ready to begin exploring some of the various applications of magic throughout history. The college has undertaken a fascinating excavation in the ruins of Saarthal nearby. It's an excellent learning opportunity. I suggest we meet there in a few hours and see what awaits us inside. That's all for now. Thank you.
With that, thus ends the quest, First Lessons. Before leaving the college, I wanted to get to know some of the people in the faction. Tolfdir and Berlina Marian, one of the other apprentices, had already left for Saarthal. However, the other two initiates were still here. Onmund is the one who informed me of the Nordic opinion on the college and magic as a whole. He makes mention of the Oblivion Crisis, which was caused by magic users, as well as the Aldmeri Dominion, elves, and casters. He also calls attention to the college's survival during the Great Collapse, and how many believe it was their doing to begin with. Next is Jizargo the Khajiit. Jizargo is rather competitive, and aims to become an incredibly powerful mage. He even says that part of his plan is to swipe trinkets and small enchanted goods, things that no one will have noticed are missing. Probably not something you'd want to admit out loud. Up next, I spoke with an Altmer named Neria. All she could talk about was Feralda. Neria really doesn't like the Gatekeeper. While I didn't check if the feelings were mutual, Neria's rant made it seem that way. Cutting my meet and greet short, the final person I spoke with was Unkano, the Thalmor High Elf.
Another new apprentice, I see. Are you of the sort that believe you're here to change the world? Or are you only in it for yourself? I assure you that I shall be watching you, all of you, very closely. I am an advisor to the Archmage. The Thalmor wish to promote relations with your college. I am at the Archmage's disposal if he requires advice. Perhaps not as often as he should. In time, I believe he will be more trusting.
Unkano's position here is most certainly secretive. No one really trusts him, as was demonstrated by Irvine and now apparently the Archmage. More than likely, he was sent here by the Aldmeri Dominion to ensure the college's cooperation with the White Gold Concordat. His attendance probably wasn't requested, so I'm sure it makes everyone happy to see him constantly get turned away. Alright, switching gears. Before heading to Saarthal, I made some minor upgrades to my current loadout. I wasn't utilizing a lot of my enchantment slots, most notably no ring, no bracers, and no boots. At the time, I could only afford to buy 2 Grand Soul Gems, so I enhanced my overall magicka through some leather bracers and a silver garnet ring. Either way, the difference was impeccable. Now I could cast my destruction spells and not have to worry as much about my magicka draining so quickly. Ready to continue with the adventure, I popped open the map and looked for Saarthal. The ruin was directly southwest of Winterhold. Mounting my horse, I began the short ride over. To say it was uneventful wouldn't be true. Not only did I have to outrun saber cats, ice wraiths, and wolves, I also ran into an old orc. My fellow Orsimer was looking for a good death. He was apparently too old to be chieftain, too old to get married, and too old to continue with the adventure. He said he wouldn't move from that spot until he was granted an honorable death. Well, luckily for him, I was looking for someone to test out my new gear on. Accepting his request, the fight was over with quickly, but it was close. Magicka wasn't an issue. It was the close quarter combat. Every swing knocked my health down by a good chunk. Maybe that's the next thing I need to focus on, raising my health. In any case, the ruins of Saarthal were right behind the old orc. I could immediately see that the college had made its mark here. Rafters, construction, equipment, there was a lot going on. Out by the entrance, I spotted Tolfdir and Marian. At the moment, the other two initiates were nowhere to be found, but they'd soon catch up to us.
And here we all are. Shall we step inside? All right. Please stay close to me while we're inside. It should be safe, but it's always better to be cautious.
As the five of us head down into the dungeons, Tolfdir rants on about Saarthal's importance. This was one of the earliest Nordic settlements. Sailing from Atmora, the Nords built these ancient keeps and made it their home. It's where the Night of Tears took place, the surprise attack that was carried out by the Snow Elves on the Nords. It's what started Ysgrimor's 500 companions and the Nordic conquest of ridding Skyrim and Solstheim of the Falmer. As the history lesson winds down, Tolfdir mentions that we'll be looking into ancient magic in the prehistoric civilizations.
Well, are there any questions before we begin? We're particularly interested in the prevalence of magical seals placed on the tombs here. It's rather unlike anything we've encountered. Ah, yes. Well, why don't you see if you can assist Arniel Gain? He's one of our scholars, here working on cataloging our finds. I expect he'd appreciate some help in locating any additional magical artifacts here in the ruins. Any enchanted items will do. The usefulness of the enchantment is irrelevant. If you find anything, the class can look it over. Now let's see. What shall we have the rest of you do?
I briefly ran into Arniel during my tour with Mirabelle, but I didn't have the chance to talk with him much. Venturing further into Saarthal, I could really see just how much the college tore this place apart. Support beams, dig sites, extractions. It'd be surprising if there was much else to even look into. Not long into my search, I found Gain and spoke with him.
I'll be amazed if we find anything useful here. What? Ah, yes, you. I remember you. You're going to help? That's fine, just don't make a mess of my work. I've only looked through a portion of this section. You can look around in the chambers just north of here. Try and be careful, all right? We don't want to damage anything.
From Arniel's dialogue, it's obvious he doesn't think I'm going to be of any help. Even most of these aforementioned enchanted items won't be that interesting to him. There are 4 points of interest for this area. 3 of them are enchanted rings, and said enchantments are nothing more than health buffs. However, the 4th item is different. It's an ancient-looking amulet, and interacting with it, events are set in motion. The way back to Arniel is closed off by a trap. Tolfdir is on the other side, and he attempts to walk me through it.
What in the world was that racket? Is everything all right? How in the world did that happen? Really? Perhaps the amulet is important somehow. Is there some way you can use it?
The Saarthal amulet's enchantment is rather dull. Spells cost 3% less to cast, certainly nothing to clap about. However, simply equipping the piece is what brings out its magic.
Do you see that? Some kind of resonance. You and the wall. It must be connected to the amulet. I wonder, what effect might your spells have?
Throwing an ice bolt at the magical spot, it manages to smash through the wall, revealing a secret passageway.
Well, would you look at that? This appears to lead somewhere. Let's see where it goes.
From here, Tolfdir and I split off from the group. He's just as dumbfounded as I am. He's unsure why this place has been sealed off and assumes that it must have served some importance.
I'm not sure what to expect here. Please be on your guard.
Hold, mage, and listen well. Know that you have set in motion a chain of events that cannot be stopped. Judgment has not been passed, as you had no way of knowing. Judgment will be passed on your actions to come, and how you deal with the dangers ahead of you. This warning is passed to you because the Psijic Order believes in you. You, Mage, and you alone, have the potential to prevent disaster. Take great care, and know that the Order is watching.
I swear I felt something rather strange just then. What just happened? I'm afraid I didn't see anything. Can you tell me more about what you saw? The Psijic Order? Are you quite sure about that? That's very odd. And danger ahead? Why, that doesn't make any sense at all. The Psijics have no connection to these ruins, and no one's seen any of their order in a long time. Perhaps we should take a look inside these coffins. Now, please do be careful. Who knows what we're going to find?
Before continuing, I wanted to hear more about the Psijic Order, as I wasn't too familiar with them.
They were a group of mages with a history that predates the Empire. Very powerful, very secretive. No one's seen them in well over 100 years. They vanished, along with their sanctuary on the Isle of Artaeum. I have no idea what connection they'd have to this place. I have no idea, but it's fascinating. Assuming it's true, of course. The Isle of Artaeum disappeared over 100 years ago, and no one has seen them since. And yet now, suddenly, they've chosen to contact you. Why, it's intriguing. If nothing else, I'd take it as a compliment. The Psijics have only ever dealt with those they feel worthy.
As Tolfdir and I turn around, the action officially begins. Draugr bursts from their tombs and aggro onto us. One of their coffins reveals another passage that leads further into the dungeon. While Tolfdir gave a somewhat satisfactory answer to my questions, he's seemingly just as confused as I am. What are these events that the apparition spoke of, and what dangers could he be referring to? Well, while this probably isn't what he meant, there are a lot of Draugr in this dungeon. After that whole ordeal, Tolfdir and I take out a few more undead. Soon, we arrive in a room with a unique layout and intricate markings.
I've never seen anything like the Nordic ruins before. Why, just look at all these coffins. This bears closer inspection. I'd like to stay a while and examine this. You, however, should press on. See if you can find whatever this vision of yours mentioned. But if it is truly dangerous, be careful. Go on ahead. I'll be sure and catch up with you before long.
For now, the Nord and I go our separate ways. It's interesting to think about how the Dragonborn will have seen scenes like this dozens of times due to their own adventures and quests. Meanwhile, this is probably a first for most scholars, and even someone like Tolfdir might have only seen this a handful of times. In any case, pressing onwards, the Draugr threat didn't end there. If anything, it only ramped up. From here, the next portion of Saarthal works similarly to other ancient Nordic tombs. The undead Nords rise from their slumber and charge in for the attack. They range from mundane Draugr to restless and even white. I'm able to keep them at bay with my destruction magic, but again, when they close the distance and land a heavy attack, it wreaks havoc on my character. The loot in here is fairly standard for a burial site. Urns and chests with gold, gems, and trinkets, items that were meant to honor the dead. At one point in my journey, I hit my first ancient Nordic puzzle. This one was really simple though. There were 4 totems. Behind each totem was the correct symbol. I suppose the challenge was that the symbols were somewhat concealed behind the totems themselves, making them hard to see. Regardless, I got past the trial and landed on a real challenge. This next chamber was medium-sized and it only had one other NPC, a Draugr Scourge. The Scourge acted as my combat test, so to speak. It was tanky and powerful. It had the ability to use the Thuum, and it wielded an ancient Nord warhammer. Thankfully, this thing was incredibly slow, and I was able to anticipate pretty much every single swing. It never landed a hit, otherwise if it had, my character would have gotten crushed. After enlisting the help of my Atronach and continuing to press the attack, the Scourge was defeated. Continuing onward, I was treated to some loot and brought to the second puzzle. This one was a little more intricate, and therefore a little more fun. There were 4 totems again, but this time, the correct symbols were in plain sight. The catch though was that by moving certain totems, others would end up moving too. So, the upper left one would end up adjusting all 4. Meanwhile, the lower right one would only affect itself. Eventually, through some trial and error, I found the correct combination. Upper left gets adjusted first, and the second is the lower left. Then the third is the upper right, and the final one is the lower right. In the end, not overly complicated, but still it offered more of an experience than the last one. Only after getting past all of the hard work, Tolfdir decided to accompany me again. He came racing through the dungeon, and together we continued the expedition. However, our adventure would soon come to an end, as what we stumbled onto was the find of a sentry. The next chamber over contained something unlike either of us had ever seen before.
Well now, would you look at that? I never imagined we'd find something like this. Why is this buried so far within Saarthal?
As Tolfdir and I went to get a closer look, we triggered the final boss of Saarthal. Sitting in front of this magical orb was the Draugr named Uric Galderson. Uric stood up from his throne and aggroed onto us. Astoundingly, Uric was unaffected by our magic. Tolfdir and I both used fire spells on the Draugr, but its health wasn't going down. After a few more attempts, Tolfdir gets an idea. He runs over to the artifact, and I'm left to face off with Galderson alone. For the moment, Uric isn't doing much. He's just eyeing me down from the lower levels. As for Tolfdir, he resorts to shocking the orb, and believe it or not, his plan actually works. Uric becomes vulnerable, but only to certain spells. It's still unaffected by fire and frost, but shock damage does the trick. Now that I've found my stride, of course, Galderson presses in for the attack and charges at me. At this point, I'm juggling my magicka and keeping my distance from Uric. As the Draugr's health gets low, my shock spells stop working. I tried fire next, but no dice there. Then lastly, I went for frost, and to my delight, Uric's health started moving again. A couple of frost bolts later, and the named Draugr was put back down. As I turned my attention back toward the orb, its barrier was gone, and Tolfdir was examining it.
I have no idea. This is amazing. Absolutely amazing. The Archmage needs to be informed immediately. He needs to see this for himself. I don't dare leave this unattended. Can you return to the college and inform Savos Aran of this discovery? Please, hurry.
Whatever this thing is, it's magnificent. It's flowing with magicka, it's inscribed with ancient runes, and it appears to be incredibly powerful. Before leaving Saarthal, I had a quick look around the rest of the chamber. On the table where Uric was sitting at, I came across the staff of Uric Galderson. Then, on the Draugr's body, I found something called the Galdr Amulet Fragment and a Writ of Sealing. The Amulet Fragment increases my magicka by 30 points. Opening the Writ of Sealing and reading it, it ends up starting a quest called Forbidden Legend. The writ itself reads, "Be bound here, Uric, murderer, betrayer, condemned by your crimes against realm and lord. May your name and your deeds be forgotten forever, and the charm which you bear be sealed by our ward." Forbidden Legend isn't actually tied to the College of Winterhold, so I won't be covering it in this series, but perhaps another time. As for the staff, the target takes 25 points of damage and twice as much magicka damage, so it's definitely useful against mages. Feeling ready to leave the crypt, I took this separate entrance out and came across the final few rewards: a Word of Power, Ice Form, and a boss level chest. Exiting Saarthal, I traveled back to the college and shot straight for the Archmage. I hadn't interacted with Savos Aran yet, so I really wasn't sure what to expect. Let's just say, the rumors about him appear to be true.
You are relatively new here, are you not? I have noticed you, but we have not spoken. Then allow me to introduce myself. I am Savos Aran, Archmage of the College of Winterhold. I am quite content to see nearly any aspect of magic explored and investigated here. But I do not and will not approve of any research or experiments that cause purposeful harm to your fellow members of the college. Are we clear? Please don't tell me that another one of the apprentices has been incinerated. I have enough to deal with right now. I see. I trust that Tolfdir will provide a more specific explanation. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Tolfdir normally looks after your little group, yes? Since he's apparently occupied, and I will need to see this discovery for myself, I think perhaps you should begin researching the subject. Speak with Urag in the Arcanium. See if he's aware of anything that matches your discovery. And good work. The next time you find yourself exploring Nordic ruins, perhaps this will be helpful.
Before leaving, I was curious if Aran knew anything about the Psijic Order.
Personally? No, not I. One of their number used to advise the Archmage when I was but an apprentice here. But that was a great many years ago, before all the members of the Order were called back to the Isle of Artaeum, and it disappeared entirely.
As a reward, Savos gifts me the Staff of Magelight, which creates a ball of light that lasts for 60 seconds. With that, thus ends the quest under Saarthal. Where to even begin? Since I'm not even sure what exactly it was that we found down there, how do I even start to research it? Well, thankfully, the Arcanium's keeper, Urag Groshub, is really good at his job. What he's not good at, though, is socializing.
You are now in the Arcanium, of which I am in charge. It might as well be my own little plane of oblivion. Disrupt my Arcanium, and I will have you torn apart by angry Atronachs. Now, do you require assistance? I know what you want. Word travels fast around here. Discovered some big mystery, huh? Well, you don't even need to ask. No, I don't have anything for you. Not anymore, anyway. I said not anymore. Orthorn stole a number of books when he ran off to Felglow Keep to join those summoners. Some kind of peace offering. I think one of those volumes may have had some relevant information. If you want them, you'll have to talk to Orthorn. Not enough to bother with. Archmage Aaron's approach to these things is just to let them sort themselves out. Although now it looks like you'll be doing the sorting. Good luck with that. He was an apprentice here at the college. Not very skilled, but got involved with a group of mages who took a liking to him. When they left, he took off after them. Stole supplies and books from the college. I suppose as a way to ingratiate himself. Let's just call it a difference of opinion with the college. They were interested in research that goes outside the bounds of what the college allows, so they were persuaded to leave.
It wouldn't be an Elder Scrolls quest without some kind of hurdle. As it stands, I need to recover 3 missing books. What they are, though, is unknown right now. On my way out, I decided to mingle with a couple more of my peers. Really, nothing relevant came from their dialogue. However, by the door was my old friend, Unkano, and he was waiting for me.
You there. I have questions for you. You were in Saarthal, yes? It has come to my attention that something was found there. I know full well that you have. Please do not insult my intelligence. Tolfdir is still there now, is he? I shall expect a full report when he returns. It is my job to know these things. My role as advisor to the Archmage is aided by knowing everything that transpires here. Thank you for your help. You may go now.
Trying to get more out of the Thalmor agent, the topic of the discovery never comes back up. Well, I suppose it's true that he has some right to know of our findings. Why he's only interested in this discovery is unclear though. In any case, Unkano's desires aren't my problem right now. Felglow Keep is located a ways southwest of Winterhold. The fort is fairly close to the Dwemer ruins of Erkenthand. Riding over, while dangerous, was a bit of a breeze. Talk about random encounters. As for this journey, I ran into a man named Balbus. Balbus was a little less violent than the old orc. He told me he was just out here picking herbs for the gourmet, and that's when I took my leave. From there, I was finally on to Felglow Keep. The exterior was guarded by a few mages and a flame atronach. Honestly, these arcane duels were actually a lot of fun. Elemental blasts were flying all over the place, and strafing was imperative for getting out of the way. I think ultimately what made it fun is that it's more engaging than melee combat. It's more mindful, and you have to actually focus on what's happening. When the outside was all clear, I made my way into the Keep's dungeon. Of course, the dungeon itself was crawling with mages, or rather, summoners. They ranged from novice to apprentice, and their specialties varied across the 3 elements. What's intriguing about Felglow is that as the crawl went on, I would catch glimpses of the summoners' lifestyles and routines. The first mage had pet frostbite spiders. What for? I'm not sure. Possibly to harvest their poison, or perhaps it really was for the companionship. Next, there was a chamber guarded by a conjurer. Said chamber held a handful of cells, and locked behind them were vampires. At first, I wasn't sure why, and the vamps weren't in the mood to talk much. Taking the risk, I prepared myself and freed them from their confines. To my surprise, they ended up joining forces and started a small rebellion. Unfortunately, their efforts were cut short. They managed to take out 1 or 2 of the summoners, but they all fell by the 3rd one. In the next room, I discovered why they were being held. The place was littered with the corpses of master vampires, as well as blood and bones. It was clear that the mages were harvesting them for their dust, and to be honest, I didn't really feel that strongly about it. A good vampire is a dead one. The next room over is where the events really started to unfold. I took on an apprentice ice mage, as well as a couple of wolves. Once they were defeated, I heard pleas for help coming from one of the cages.
You have to let me out. They're going to do something awful to me. There's a lever right there in the center. Hurry, before more of them show up. Don't leave me here. Yes, yes. Did Archmage Arin send you? He sent you to rescue me, didn't he? What? The book? Oh. Oh dear. I shouldn't have taken them. I know, it was stupid. I was stupid. It won't happen again. Help me get out of here, and I'll help you find them. Please. They threw me in here until they were ready to use me in one of their experiments. This wasn't supposed to happen. I thought they wanted my help, not to use me as a test subject. I don't have them anymore. She took them. The caller. She's the one who put me in here. Please, let me out of here.
So it looks like Orthorn's master plan didn't go over so well. He could be lying, but if that were the case, why would he trap himself inside of a cage? Choosing to believe him, but keeping my guard up, I pulled the lever and released the elf from his cell.
Thank you, thank you. I promise I'll help. And then I'll go back to the college and I'll beg them to let me back in. Yes, of course. I said I'd tell you, didn't I? The caller will have them. She was most interested in one of the volumes. Although not interested enough to keep me from being locked up. Oh, you've saved me. Thank you so much. Who knows what they'd have done to me if you hadn't come along. I promise I'll help you get out of here.
From here, Orthorn became a follower, and to be honest, he was incredibly helpful. The next area we went to served as some sort of training ground. 3 mages were practicing their destruction spells, and a 4th was overseeing everything. Together, Orthorn and I summoned our flame atronachs. We let them be the meat shields, so to speak. They blocked most of their attacks, and they dished out some powerful fire magic. Up next was a chamber full of necromancers. They had rows of coffins, bodies, and skeletons lined up on the walls. While Urag never got into what those differences were with the summoners, I think I can now piece it together. This group uses inhumane means to achieve their goals. Capturing and torturing vampires, grave robbing, snatching the dead, it certainly walks the line. As Orthorn and I continued onward, the threats never let up. Necromancers, conjurers, and mages alike were at every turn. We fought through atronachs and familiars as well. Soon, Orthorn informed me that we were getting close to the library. That's where we would find the books, but that's also where the caller was. Just outside of her room, we took care of her guards and readied ourselves for what lay ahead. Ascending the steps, Orthorn and I entered the Felglow Keep ritual chamber.
So you're the one who barged into my home and laid waste to my projects. How nice to meet you. Names no longer matter. You may refer to me as the Caller. Now, do you have a reason for making such a mess? So you're just one of Arin's lackeys. That's disappointing. You show real promise. You come here, kill my assistants, disrupt my work. You've annoyed me, so I don't think I'll be giving you anything. An arrangement, after you've destroyed so much. Fine, leave me the elf. You may go with your books.
Wait, what?
He gets the books, I get you. It's very simple.
But why?
This little adventure of yours has cost me a number of test subjects. I need more, and you'll do nicely.
You wouldn't do that, would you? You wouldn't leave me here with her?
I'm waiting.
It was really tempting to leave Orthorn behind. In the eyes of the college, he was a traitor. What's more, this seems like such an easy out. I could grab the books and be off in no time. However, Orthorn is the reason I got this far, and the caller seems like a truly heinous person. So I took this brief grace period as an opportunity to get a cheap shot off. My first attacks on the caller did heaps of damage, which was an amazing start. After that though, the real challenge had begun. Several flame atronachs came to her beck and call. The caller herself was able to let off incredibly powerful spells that shred through my health. After a couple of moments, the elf would teleport away and appear somewhere else in the room, disrupting my attack flow. Luckily, my shock damage was able to do its part, and eventually, the caller was all out of magic. The only thing she could do now was hurl her fists at me. When that happened, I was able to close in for the kill. With the summoners eradicated, I was able to grab the keep's key off of their leader's body, and I was able to grab the books. The 3 stolen texts were quite interesting. One of them was the Night of Tears, another was called Fragment on Artaeum, and the third one was called The Last King of the Aelids. From here, I was finally free to leave Felglow, but before doing so, Orthorn wanted to have a brief chat.
Well, everything worked out nicely, didn't it? Yes, you certainly do. You'll be going back to the college then. I think perhaps I'll wait a bit before venturing there myself. Let this whole thing blow over, you know. Give certain parties a chance to forget what I may have done. Still, you've got me out of that cage, and I won't forget it. Thank you again, and good luck to you.
You know, that's probably not the worst plan in the world, and trust me, Orthorn's full of those. Urag would probably never forgive the guy, but maybe Arin and Irvine might, so it's best for him to hold out hope. In the connecting room, I looted the shelves in the boss level chest. With full pockets, I ventured back out into Skyrim and traveled to the college. Apparently, a lot had transpired since I went looking for the books. Heading into the Hall of the Elements, the magical orb was apparently moved from Saarthal over to the college. How that was done, I have no clue. That thing wasn't fitting through any of the doorways. Tolfdir was overlooking it. Good to see that he's still well. Now, before returning the books to Urag, I decided to read them for myself. A spoiler, the librarian takes them away from the Dragonborn. They were excellent reads though, and do shed light on some of this questline's mysteries and plotlines. First, I started with Night of Tears. The book goes as follows. Saarthal holds a prominent place in Skyrim history, even if most do not remember it by name. It is of course the site of one of the first major Nord settlements, one of the first cities of men in Skyrim, and the earliest known capital of their civilization. It was also the site of terrible bloodshed, when the elves attempted to drive the Nords out of Skyrim, to succeed only in incurring their wrath in the form of Ysgramor and his fabled 500 companions, who swept the elves from Skyrim and firmly established it as the home of the Nords. All this is known, but little else. What happened on that Night of Tears, when Saarthal was razed to the ground? What provoked the elves to such a deliberate, vicious attack, and what prompted such a severe response from the Nords? Vingalmo's treatise on the Altmer Antecedent suggests that the elves of the Merethic era, along with their counterparts, the early Dwemer, possessed a degree of sophistication unparalleled in Tamriel. They displayed power beyond what could be expected of the time. While a distinct explanation is not given for this, I believe that this work, compared with the early writings of Hesef Tyrannus, suggests that something greater was at work on that night in Saarthal. The true motives behind the Night of Tears have been obscured to us by the passage of time, but I believe this was not a simple war of territory or of control in Skyrim. I believe that what happened was a significant event based around something very particular. The Nords found something when they built their city, buried deep in the ground. They attempted to keep it buried, but the elves learned of it and coveted it for themselves. Thus, they assaulted Saarthal, their goal not to drive the Nords out, but to secure this power for themselves. I believe Ysgramor knew something of what the elves would find under Saarthal, and rallied together his people to keep the elves from gaining it. When Nords once again controlled Skyrim, this power was buried deep below the earth and sealed away. Time has kept this knowledge from us, but it is my hope that time will also reveal the truth of these words. Every effort will be made to relocate Saarthal and find that which has been lost to us. Up next, I read The Last King of the Aelids. It reads, The Aelids, or Heartland High Elves, ruled Cyrodiil in the long ages of myth before the beginning of recorded history. One of the earliest recorded dates, in fact, is the fall of White Gold Tower in the First Era year 243, which is commonly assumed to mark the end of the Aelids. Although Aeliad rule over all of Cyrodiil was indeed broken in the First Era year 243, this was only one of the most obvious stages near the end of a long decline. The first 2 centuries of the First Era saw increasing strife between the great Aeliad lords of Cyrodiil. Alesia appears to have taken advantage of a period of civil war to launch her uprising. Imperial historians have traditionally attributed her victory to intervention from Skyrim, but it appears that she had at least as much help from rebel Aeliad lords during the siege of White Gold Tower. The popular image of the Aelids as brutal slave masters is based in fact, of course, but it is less well known that a number of Aelid princes continued to rule parts of Cyrodiil after 263, as vassals of the new Empress of Cyrodiil. This suggests either that Aelid rule was not universally detested, or that Alesia and her successors were more pragmatic than is traditionally believed, or perhaps some of both. In any event, excavations at a number of Aelid sites show continued occupation and even expansion during the so-called Late Aelid period, First Era 243 to 498. At first, many Aelid lords continued to rule as vassals of the new human regime. In some cases, Aelid supporters of Alesia were even rewarded with new lands taken from slain enemies. It is not clear to what extent human slavery continued under the Cyrodiilic Empire. Humans continued to dwell in the Aelid-ruled areas of Cyrodiil, but there's nothing definitive to show under what terms. This was an uneasy relationship from the beginning, and was not destined to last long. Resentment at the continued presence of Aelid nobles within the empire was a contributing factor to the rise of the so-called Alesian Order, founded by Maruk. The first victims of the Alesians were the Aelids of Cyrodiil. In the early 300s, the surviving Aelid communities in human-ruled areas were obliterated one by one, the refugees temporarily swelling the power of the remaining Aelid lordships. Then, in 361, the Alesians gained control of the empire and enforced the Alesian doctrines throughout its domain. The Aelid lordships were abolished. Enforcement of this decree does not appear to have required much direct violence. It seems that by this point, the balance of power was so overwhelmingly against them, and their fate so long foreshadowed, that most of the remaining Aelids simply left Cyrodiil, eventually being absorbed into the elven populations of Valenwood and High Rock. Indeed, the rise of the Durrani hegemony may be linked to this exodus of Aelids from Cyrodiil, a connection so far little studied by historians. Still, a remnant of the Aelid population seems to have survived the rule of the Alesians, because we hear of the last king of the Aelids joining the Battle of Glenumbria Moors, where the Durranis decisively defeated the Alesians in 482. How this king's people survived the preceding century is unknown. We do not even know who they were, although recent research points to Ninalata as the possible resting place of the last king. Unfortunately, in the current state of the empire, funds are no longer available for proper scientific investigation of such extensive ruins. So, the answer to these questions will have to be left to future generations. Then lastly, there's Fragment on Artaeum. It goes, the Isle of Artaeum is the third largest island in the Somerset archipelago, located south of the Moradhanan village of Potenza and west of the mainland village of Runcabe. It is best known for being home to the Sigic Order, perhaps the oldest monastic group in Tamriel. The earliest written record of Sigics is from the 20th year of the First Era and tells the tale of the renowned Breton sage and author Verney traveling to the Isle of Artaeum to meet with Acasis, the right master of the Sigics. Even then, the Sigics were the counselors of kings and proponents of the Elder Way, taught to them by the original race that inhabited Tamriel. The Elder Way is a philosophy of meditation and study set to bind the forces of nature to the individual will. It differs from Magicka in origin, but the effects are much the same. That said, it is perhaps more than coincidence that the Isle of Artaeum literally vanished from the shores of Somerset at the beginning of the Second Era at about the time of the founding of the Mages Guild in Tamriel. Various historians and scholars have published theories about this, but perhaps none but Acasis and his own could shed light on the matter. 500 years passed and Artaeum returned. The Sigics on the isle consisted of persons, mostly elves, who had disappeared and were presumed dead in the Second Era. They could not, or would not, offer any explanation for Artaeum's whereabouts during that time, or the fate of Acasis and the original council of Artaeum. Currently, the Sigics are led by the lore master, Solaris, who has presided over the Council of Artaeum for the last 250 years. The council's influence in Tamriel politics is tidal. The kings of Somerset, particularly those of Moradhanan, have sought the Sigics' opinion. Emperor Uriel V was much influenced by the council in the early, most glorious parts of his reign, before his disastrous attack on Akavir. It has even been suggested that the fleet of King Orgrim of Piandonia was destroyed by a joint effort of Emperor Antiochus and the Sigic Order. The last four emperors, Uriel V, Morahatha, Pelagius IV, and Uriel VII, have been suspicious of the Sigics enough to refuse ambassadors from the Isle of Artaeum within the imperial city. The Isle of Artaeum is difficult to chart geographically. It is said that it shifts continuously either at random or by decree of the council. Visitors to the island are so rare as to be almost unheard of. Anyone desirous of meeting with the Sijic may find contacts in Patanza and Runcabe, as well as many of the kingdoms of Somerset. Were it most accessible, Artaeum would be a favorite destination for travelers. I have been to the Isle once and still dream of its idyllic orchards and clear pastures, its still and silent lagoons, its misty woodlands, and the unique Sijic architecture that seems to be as natural as its surroundings, as well as wondrous in its own right. The Sephora Tower in particular I would study, for it is a relic from a civilization that predates the High Elves by several hundred years and is still used in certain rites by the Sijics. Perhaps one day I might return. Note, the author is currently on the Isle of Artaeum by gracious consent of Master Sargenius of the Council of Artaeum. Like I said, these are all fascinating reads, and they help to shed some light on a couple of the plot points for this faction story. There is, however, one book that stands out from the three as the most important. Even Urag Groshub can see it too.
Well, well, and you seem to be in one piece. Thank you. I'll look these over and inform Mirabelle if I find anything relevant. Night of Tears, eh? I remember this one. Well, isn't that interesting? Did you read it yourself? If I recall it correctly, that has some interesting implications. You should mention that to Toldir. And here. I suppose you've earned these.
As a reward, Urag hands the player 6 different skill books. They affect alteration, restoration, illusion, enchanting, conjuration, and destruction. With that, thus ends the quest, hitting the books. As to what happens now, well, it's time to learn what this magical orb really is.